Good morning, everyone, and happy Women's Equality Day. Thank you all for being here and for celebrating Women's Equality Day with us. And I'm Dina Refke. I am the director of the Center for Women in Government and Civil Society at the Rockefeller College of Public Affairs and Policy, University at Albany. The center is a center with a social change agenda. It's a research and education center with a social change agenda, and we advance gender equity through research and education and have been doing this for over 40 years. And thanks to the strong and committed leadership of the board of directors of the center, many of them are here today, and I'll ask them to please stand up to be recognized. I also want to acknowledge the leadership of the university and Provost Dr. Kim. Dr. Kim, can you please stand up to be recognized? I'd like to also recognize our dean, the leadership of the college, Dean Julie Navkov. And Karen Carpenter-Palumbo, president of the board. I also want to ask all of our fellows, graduates of our Women's Leadership Academy, to please stand up to be recognized. So as a center that has been promoting and developing women's leadership, women's public service leadership, we're incredibly honored to have the first female governor of New York State, Ms. Kathy Hochul. Please welcome Kathy Hochul.
Good morning, and thank you, Dina. Thank you for rousing up this crowd on Women's Equality Day. And for your leadership at this incredible institution that is creating leaders by the day. And I know many of them work with my administration. I've had a chance to see their passion for public service. So thank you for everything that's done here at the SUNY Center for Women in Government and Civil Society. Also, I want to recognize Commissioner Roberta Reardon, who's been at my side through many, many challenges. Great to see her doing a fabulous job. Assembly Member Patricia Fahey has joined us here as well, a great champion. Starlita Smith, the Executive Director of the YWCA, is here. Thank you, Starlita, we're hearing from her. Karen Carpenter-Palumbo, you've been recognized 3 times now, but go for it, Karen. And Julie, the Dean, I want to thank her and everybody who's here today. So really, 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 really proud to be here on this anniversary. 102 years since women secured the right to actually just cast a ballot. Not to run for office, not to do anything else, but just be able to walk into a polling place and cast a ballot. And it was a big deal. It was a big deal because women had been denied this right to participate in democracy since the beginning, the founding of our nation up until then. So this was significant. And we talk about this a lot, especially as I chaired the Centennial Commission for Women's Suffrage here in New York. We were ahead of most major states. That's what we do. We're New Yorkers. We always have to be first. It's a matter of pride. So back in 2017, we celebrated the entire year, and culminating in a great celebration all across the state. One in New York City where we lit up everything purple and all of our colors, and just really put a spotlight on the responsibility that women of New York have, because it was our foremothers and foregrandmothers who went on this long, long journey since 1848, when a small community called Seneca Falls hosted 300 enlightened individuals. And it's amazing to think to this day, how did 300 people know where to go without social media telling them where the event was? I don't know. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. To the women there, but also the enlightened men. We had people like Frederick Douglass, who spoke passionately about the woman's right to vote, and so we've always had and needed strong allies. But the women really stood up with their voices and went against the tides of their society, their churches, their communities, and indeed, many cases, their families. So it's in profound courage that they did it. So we should never lose sight of the fact that these were courageous individuals who put us on a different path. So 70 years later, right here in Albany, we would secure that right to vote for New York women. So every day since then, we honor those early trailblazers. We honor the Sojourner Truths, the Harriet Tubmans, who were also part of not just freedom for slaves, but also the women's rights movement. Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, Eleanor Roosevelt, and more recently, people like Shirley Chisholm, true people who stood up and says, I am a woman and I have a place, and that place is anywhere I want it to be. And that's where we are today. And that's who we are today. Women have more progress to be made, without a doubt. We're going to talk about the shortfalls that exist today, but it's also on this celebratory day, Women's Equality Day, that we honor the milestones. And in case you haven't been paying attention, one of those milestones was achieved a year ago. And I am so honored to be the first woman governor of the state of New York. So honored. Thank you. Thank you. And we've demonstrated. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And I've said this before, I do feel the weight on my shoulders, but I'm up for it because I also know what's going on today is going to affect the ability of women to be successful in the future. We are judged today. And the question being, can a woman handle the rough and tumble business of governing a state like New York? And we've been at it a year, my friends, and I believe the answer is yes. And it's not about me, it's about the inner strength that so many women have and always have had, and the confidence and the ability to see a problem, not just on how to solve it, but to how to make things right for people using your heart and your emotion. So strength and compassion, that's the combination that I feel that women leaders bring. And that's how we're changing history. That's how we're changing history right here. But I'm also very aware, as the first mom of the state and the first grandma of the state, that there's a lot of families out there that are struggling. And boy, this pandemic was cruel for women. I wrote about this in an op-ed literally just a couple of weeks after the first shutdowns. And we saw people, the women primarily, in the low-wage jobs who still had to show up, serving restaurant food, packaging up and giving to people in their cars as they pulled up. They showed up. The healthcare workers who showed up, leaving their own children, going into a place where they could contract a deadly virus, and so little was known back then, but they had no choice. They went, they came back at the end of the day, exposed their families, their parents, others, and they went back again the next day. And I saw the power of women being able to endure the unthinkable in those early months in particular. But there are other women whose jobs were just flat out lost. Women in hospitality, people who worked in the hotels and so many other businesses where the jobs just went away. They didn't come back, and many of them are still not back. So two dynamics going on here. One is that lower wage jobs are primarily filled by women. That is a problem that needs to be fixed right now. But also just valuing them more, paying them more so they can take care of their kids and their education and all the stress that moms are under even today, worrying about, am I gonna have enough money to fill that child's backpack? Because everything costs so much more than it did 1 year ago. So women are under stress. And what are we doing about it? Well, first of all, we're talking about it. We're not pretending it doesn't exist. You don't sweep it under the rug. And what we've done, and with my partners in the legislature, we've expanded childcare. I know all about childcare. I couldn't get someone to watch my kids 30 years ago, and I had to give up a job I loved working on Capitol Hill. So I know what that's all about. Our income went from modest to zero from my end of the ledger. And that was a struggling time for us, but it was the reality I dealt with. That hasn't changed for a lot of women. So for the first time ever, we have made a record investment in childcare, over $7 billion over the next 4 years to help expand the opportunities so over half of the children in the state of New York will be able to have subsidized childcare. We also know that when women go into the workplace, they deserve to be free from sexual harassment. Period, stop. And we've had to come a long way in changing culture here in government, but also sending the message across the state, either in a private setting or in a public sector office. It's not okay, it's not tolerable, and there are consequences. So that is what we focused on over the last year as well. Also putting women front and center in workforce development. Now that doesn't sound real exciting to some people, but Roberta Reardon knows what I'm talking about. I get excited about this. We go to workforce training centers, and these are apprenticeship programs where people are learning the skills. And I'm telling you, these are good paying jobs, and we're building back this state. And I want to see more women in those jobs, more people of color in those jobs, whether it's the green energy jobs, where we're creating a whole new industry, the semiconductor industry, the trades where we're doing construction projects, putting up affordable housing. I want to see more women in those jobs, and we are laser focused on this, so that has been another commitment of ours. There's also streamlining the process to be certified as an MWBE. How about that, once and for all? It is a hassle. I helped start a number of family businesses. My sister wanted to start a tech company. She wanted her sister, the lawyer, who knew nothing about it, to figure it out many years ago, and to help her get certified as an MWBE. I still have PTSD from that experience. It is far too hard. It is, you want to pull your hair out when you realize, the opportunities are there, ready to be seized. Billions of dollars of shares of state and local government contracts to help women get off the ground and start their business and do everything they wanted to do, hire lots of people. But the regulations and the frustration around it sometimes just become too daunting. So we're shifting our focus and making that easier so we get more women involved. Another area we just announced a couple weeks ago. First time since the TAP program has been available in the state of New York, 1964. It was always available only for full-time students, forgetting the fact that so many people, women in particular, have to work a job, they want to go to school, they have to come home and take care of their older parents, take care of their kids. They have so much going on, and we never gave them financial help to get that education until now. We said tuition assistance is available for part-time students as well. Thank you. Thank you. And then we're doing all this and getting through the pandemic, and all of a sudden, the Supreme Court of the United States of America, at the end of June, changed the lives of women all across this country in a way that is cruel. It was unexpected because nominees had gone before the Senate and said they would support the law of the land, which was Roe v. Wade, something that's been in the law in New York State since 1970, 3 years before Roe v. Wade. We're proud of that fact. And to have those rights stripped away and told that you don't matter, and we're now going to have an era of government-mandated pregnancies, stripping away your right to make a decision, or even a child's right, a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, who's the victim of rape or incest, becomes impregnated and has to become a parent before they're even reached the age old enough to drive a car. In what country does that happen? This is not a country I recognize anymore. And all the years and century of fighting for women's rights, and to see it just be destroyed with one decision. And we gathered back here, we stood up and says, not happening in New York, not under this governor, that will not happen. I can assure you that. But thank you. So, We immediately sprung into action when the decision came down, allocating over $35 million immediately, actually before the decision. We knew the decision was coming to our providers so they could start ramping up their services. And do we really need that? Yes. What's happening in my hometown of Buffalo? People are coming in from Ohio, 3 hours away, and looking for services that are being denied to them in a neighboring state. That's already happening. And all these trigger laws, where today, and it may get worse, 1 out of 3 women in this country of childbearing age have lost those rights. It just seems unending. We'll keep fighting back here in New York. It's in our DNA to be fighters. But this is a tough time for women in our country. It really is. The impact of the pandemic, now having their rights devalued, destroyed, stripped away, and everyone always thought that in America, we always move toward progress. We don't roll back progress. So this is a hard hit for young women who are learning about government in places like this. But I want them to not give up. I want them to suit up for battle and be part of the next generation of fighters, just like the brave women whose DNA we share as New Yorkers, who fought for the simple right to vote. That's what we're talking about here today. But in the meantime, we have to figure out what happened during this pandemic, how we solve for this, how we figure out how to get women back to where they were in an even a better place. And that's why I'm calling on Roberta Reardon once again to convene a study of COVID-19's impact on New York's women. And it's going to be broad. We're going to peel back every dynamic. And let's look at not just in the workplace, but what happened to women when the decisions were made to have all the kids go home and learn remotely. Wow. Wow. What a mistake that was. What a mistake that was. Women couldn't go to their jobs. They lost their jobs, or they thought they're back at their jobs, and one child in a classroom tests positive. The whole class goes home for a week and a half. I mean, it was chaos, nothing short of chaos. And it just seems to have not ended. So that's what I'm announcing today. Directing Commissioner Reardon, the Department of Labor, to conduct this study. I want to get to the bottom of this. I want to hold hearings. I want to get testimony. I want to hear from women who've been affected. I want to hear from their employers. I want to hear from everybody on how we make sure we lift women up and never, ever again go back to this dark place where women in this state and this nation bore the brunt of a global pandemic. It was unfair. We have to figure out how it happened and make sure that we have the procedures in place so women are in a far better place. And don't let it happen again. But if we ever get to a situation where decisions are being made, that women will say, that didn't work, we're not going back there again, okay? And that's what I want to accomplish with this. We did a similar study back in 2018. We look at wage gap across, we had hearings all over the state of New York, and we talked about it. And as a result of what we did, we explicitly now outlaw unequal pay on the basis of protected class. We also banned employers from asking about salary history. Boy, I wish that was in place when I was starting my career. You know, we calculated, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars are not there at the end of a woman's career because she is a young 20-something, didn't know to negotiate when I had that first job on Capitol Hill. I left a law firm, was offered a 50% cut in pay so I could have the privilege of public service. I did it, but didn't know the guy sitting next to me, who was not a lawyer, less education, was making more than I did. So this happened to me. I'm not letting it happen to the women of New York. I'm not letting that happen. So we made those changes, Roberta, and I want to thank you for your leadership on that. So all I have to say now. The torch has been passed to us, not just to hold and pass to the next generation, but to make it glow even brighter and be a beacon to other women across this country. And I say to them, come to New York. Bring your talents, bring your passion to employers. And I have to tell you, I'm on the phone calling employers every day. I'll stop at nothing. Because I'm saying to employers, do you really want to be headquartered in a state that is hostile to perhaps half or even more of your workforce? Do you really want to keep paying to have to fly them to places like New York? Or would you just rather be in New York? So I'm out there making that pitch. I'm going to keep fighting for all of New York, but particularly as we honor the people who came before us, who gave us this Women's Equality Day, who allowed me to have the extraordinary privilege to represent you in the highest levels of office. After today, we say all the barriers are broken, that women will never, ever be held back in this state, not now, not ever. So thank you very much. And with that, let's bring up our next speaker. Roberta Reardon. Roberta Reardon, thank you.
Thank you, Governor Hochul. You know, it's such an honor to be here on this day, in this room, with all of these wonderful women, and a few men, our allies. I am so excited to be tapped for this job. We had such a great, we had a great time, actually, doing the original gender pay gap study, but to take it now to this next step is really, it's an honor to be given this opportunity. Thank you. You know, you talked about passing the torch. You're our torch. So thank you. You know, this center is the perfect backdrop for this occasion. Thank you, Director, for allowing us to be here, for graciously hosting us. And I want to recognize my fellow cabinet members because it is such an honor and privilege to serve alongside all of you. Today with us, Commissioner Jeanette Moy from the New York State Office of General Services, Commissioner Marie-Therese Dominguez, New York State Department of Transportation, Commissioner Viviana DeCohen, New York State Division of Veterans Affairs, Commissioner Carrie Neufeld, New York State Office for People with Developmental Disabilities, Executive Director Kelly Owens, New York State Office for the Prevention of Domestic Violence, and of course, President and CEO, I think this is the fourth mention you get, Maureen Coleman of Environmental Facilities Corporation. So thank you all, and I really mean it. It is an honor to serve with all of you. You really make all of us proud. And just exceptional women. So Governor Hochul, speaking of exceptional women, as the first female governor of the state of New York, you shattered a glass ceiling, not just for yourself, but for all of us. And I look forward to the day when I don't have to mention that because it won't be a rarity anymore. It'll just be, oh, that person got that job rather than the first woman, the first person of color. We're all in this together, but you're the first. And you deserve recognition because you continue to inspire women every day with your incredible leadership. You talk about leadership. Your leadership is really stellar. Your total commitment to ensuring that all women have all the opportunities to do anything they need to do, want to do, to succeed in our economy. Because women are half of our economy and we can't leave them out. From reproductive rights to enhancing our childcare system, to tackling labor and healthcare inequalities and more, you have accomplished so much in just this first year alone. I can't wait to see where we go from here. This latest announcement really reinforces your commitment to women across the state of New York and beyond, frankly. And while all of these are certainly welcomed achievements that we've gotten so far, I think everyone in this room can agree that there is so much more that needs to be done. We cannot stop here. And the pandemic has taught us how fragile some of those accomplishments really are. Governor Hochul and I have kept our finger on the pulse of many issues tied to gender inequity in the workplace, both as women and as co-chairs of the recent extensive gender wage gap report. We poured through data. We heard from experts across the state. We held multiple meetings, large and small. And we found out just how wide this pay gap truly is. And this difficult picture has only gotten worse since the pandemic. The inequities are even more staggering for women of color. COVID-19 added fuel to the fire due to the disproportionate impact on working women. As the governor said, more women are working in service industries. So that's a sector that was completely devastated very early on in the pandemic. And that's a part of our economy that is still recovering. They are not back to where they used to be. Childcare, everybody in this room, whether you have a child or not, understands that was adding salt to a wound when daycare and schools shuttered almost at the same time. Women had to juggle full-time childcare while working, or they left the workforce altogether because they had to take care of their families. I know this happened because I got emails and phone calls from people I knew and people I didn't know saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have a job, I support my family, and I can't take care of my children. I can't leave them alone. While schools have since reopened, God bless us, and many women have returned to the workplace, the pandemic exposed a very significant weakness in our system. We simply do not have enough childcare in New York State available across the state, especially for workers in occupations outside of the traditional Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 schedule. The second shift, the third shift, the weekends, the overnights, they can't find any childcare at all. And we need to make sure we address that. Efforts are underway. I'm very happy to say our governor is looking at ways to implement innovative solutions to expand childcare across the state for all of those workers who have been left out of the system so far. You know, according to a recent study, about 39% of American women with children younger than 5 reported that they had quit their jobs or had reduced their hours since the pandemic began. 39%. The survey also showed that most mothers who cut back on work did so even though they didn't have adequate income if they weren't working a full shift. They didn't have a choice. Believe me, businesses are feeling the effects of this void. When women are not part of our workforce, we are literally leaving money on the table. It damages our economy and it bruises our culture. And with many businesses still struggling to find skilled workers, this problem continues to impact all of us. Women also struggle to break into fields that are usually dominated by men, and I'm sure there are many women in this room who knows how that feels. I know in my life, if I opened a door and looked into a room and I didn't see myself reflected in that room, one of two things happened. Either I walked away from a great opportunity, or I felt like I had to armor up to be able to go into that room where I was not seen. That should never happen again. That is my experience, but I can bet every woman in this room has had that experience one way or another, and it's just not right. We have to stop that. While we are gaining ground and expanding access to career opportunities through great equalizing programs like Registered Apprenticeships, my favorite program that we do at the DOL, we must do more of that. We need to actually show women in these roles, especially women of color. They need to see themselves being successful in these careers. These are just a few examples of the issues that we know are contributing to the gender wage gap. But with the added impact of the pandemic, it's important, more important now than ever, take a closer look to see what the real story is, because knowledge is power. And once we know the full scope of what we have to deal with, we can take those important steps to implement real solutions right now. Governor Hochul, I thank you for your bold leadership and for being a champion to working women across the state and, in fact, across the nation. Your unwavering commitment to ensuring equity is part of your nation-leading effort to put New York State on a path to prosperity. Thank you again, and I look forward to working on these issues and helping to usher positive change for all women everywhere in this state. And now, please join me in welcoming the amazing YWCA of the Greater Capital Region Executive Director, Starlita Smith.
Good morning. Thank you, Governor Hochul, for inviting YWCA of the Greater Capital Region on Women's Equality Day as you shine a light on the pandemic's effects of women in the workforce. All of us at YWCA GCR are proud to be here representing the largest women's organization in the world. 19 strong in our beautiful state of New York. My name is Starlita Smith. I am the proud executive director of YWCA of the Greater Capital Region, where our mission is to empower women, to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. Every day, we are home to 104 women and over 50 children who would otherwise be homeless or living in substandard housing. Throughout the height of the pandemic, our essential work at YWCA GCR did not stop. The need for supportive services, safe, affordable housing, and food security for the women and families that we serve was more important than ever. Consistency is key when working with and uplifting our population, but absolutely nothing about the pandemic was consistent. Information and recommendations changed daily, and it was difficult to anticipate what was best for our women during that time, let alone communicate it. Honestly, when I think about what transpired during COVID, it's a blur. But 2020 was one of the scariest years I've ever endured because everything in my life and the women that I worked with was uncertain. Our women were forced to make decisions between being employed and caring for their children due to daycare centers and schools being closed, making the decision to pay rent or put food on the table, as their children were now home all day and not able to participate in their school's free food programs. Women who have severe and persistent mental health learned that mental health agencies they worked with shut down and had to depend on the tools given in the past to maintain their mental health while trying to survive in a world that was so uncertain. As the pandemic intensified, many of the conditions that fueled intimate partner violence, with many families facing economic tension along with stress and the uncertainties created by COVID-19, being quarantined, substance abuse, mental health, these factors created an environment that exacerbated domestic violence. Generally, I can say that I can stay focused through a crisis. However, with the compound effects of dealing with the dual pandemic of COVID-19 and racism, as well as my own health, the well-being of my friends and family, being a new executive director 3 months in, coming to work and working with my staff, as well as our residents and their families, everyone was looking to me for answers, consistency, and comfort. I was literally running on depletion and fear. My self-care resources were also closed, so I had to challenge myself because I knew this: I was not gonna let these women down or myself. I learned new ways to adapt and uplift myself, and through this process, it empowered me to better uplift others while adapting to an ever-changing world and quickly pivoting to make critical changes that embodied our mission, provided hope, highlighted the good, hard, yet necessary work we do every single day, expressing the message that we got you. The pandemic has exposed sharp economic and social inequalities and has widened the already existing gap with the most vulnerable in society, including unequal impacts affecting women and girls by virtue of their gender. From pay equity to healthcare to racism in America, women, especially BIPOC women, suffer the most. When women suffer, the economy suffers, therefore, we all suffer. Today, I want to challenge New York State to continue to center women and join us on our mission to break these cycles of oppression on women, because we understand the system that divides, impoverishes, and destroys us cannot stand if we do. Thank you.